Good morning, Navitor members. We're honored to have you here. Today's topic is a very highly requested one, agribusiness and how to cultivate new leads in an overlooked market. So I'm going to give you 3 bits here to wet your whistle. Number 1, agriculture is a thriving industry in this country. It's worth $2.8 trillion. And interesting to note, distributors are actually 40% of the overall revenue. Sound familiar? Number 2 then is print and ag is an underrated, underserved market. They don't have traditional budgets for print and marketing like you might be used to. No, they have big budgets, but the print budget is typically in operations and packaging. So some of the comments that you guys are putting in there resonates true with us too in the research. And number 3, over the next few decades, due to climate change, the US and specifically the Midwest is expected to become the top producer of food products for the world. So really a lot of opportunity in this industry. My name is Stephanie Drago. I have been in this industry for 10 years and working e-commerce and marketing now for over 20. As I start to introduce the speakers, I'm going to get you started with a poll. What % of your customers are in agriculture? All right, so Rhonda, I'm going to start with you. You have been with us for 5 years and in the industry for 30. You've covered labels, packaging, commercial print, checks, forms, and pretty much everything under the whole printing gambit. So today you're going to cover the essentials in ag operations. Welcome, Rhonda.
Thank you, Stephanie, for highlighting my experience. I have, in fact, been around the business for over 30 years.
That's awesome. And we're really glad to have you here today, Rhonda. For myself, I'm going to be covering some of the top products for talent acquisition and retention in agriculture. And next up will be Harris Mailman. You've been in this industry for 9 years, and today you're going to bring forward the top products for marketing yourself. So whether courting a seed company or a grocer, Harris is going to get you guys all excited about what this industry is really worth. Welcome, Harris.
Thanks, Stephanie. It's great to be part of this. It's my first one, so I'm hoping to keep my ums and uhs around, under 20 today.
Okay.
So I spent a good amount of time in direct sales, so looking forward to sharing some of my experiences with all of you.
Yeah, thanks, Harris. So for folks on the call today, our goal at the end of this 30 minutes is to make you feel more confident in getting started in this very overlooked market. 96% of our workshop attendees, such as yourselves, report that these webinars make an impact on their business. So in order for that to happen, turn off your cell phones, shut down the distractions, use the chat feature, ask any question you want to, and focus on your next profitability and prospecting steps. As Brenda, I'll start to pass this to you, but first let me just share the results of this poll. It is kind of what I thought, that a lot of our distributors here have little to none as far as customers in agriculture already. So we're going to tweak the webinar here today based on your experience. So it looks like most of you are kind of in that territory. So Rhonda, I'll pass it over to you then.
All right, so it sounds like we have some opportunity to open some doors and get everybody started in this business. So let's dig in. This morning, I'll be speaking mainly to the operations side of our agribusinesses. To start with, there are a couple of general things I'd like to just share. One thing we've learned about this market is most of the print buying is done through the operations budget. So the buyer is managing a lot and likely really busy. If you can win their confidence, they're going to appreciate finding a resource that can be a one-stop shop who will save them time and provide them creative and effective solutions. Many operations projects are not that exciting, but they are necessary to running the business. And remember, products that are necessary rarely get cut from the budget. And in fact, some of these projects help the business drive efficiency and profit, something that's currently very important to these customers. In a recent survey of the industry, 60% of the responding businesses said they are predicting growth in 2022. More than a third plan to release new products or launch new businesses, and most are looking for ways to be more efficient, lean, and productive. So what's standing in the way of their accomplishing this goal? The logistics of moving product from seed to table is a massive undertaking, crossing over many types of businesses. The food grower, raw material suppliers, the trucking and shipping companies that bring supplies and raw materials in and take finished product out, and seed and chemical suppliers, software manufacturers, etc. According to research, our AG buyers are concerned about several current challenges. I'm going to skip the number one because Stephanie's going to cover it in depth in the next section. Thank you, Stephanie. But other top things on their mind include funding, regulations and compliance, and marketing. Let's focus for a minute on regulations and compliance. It's important to the business to communicate with employees and other visitors while they're on site. There are rules that are regulated by local, state, and federal oversight organizations. Think OSHA, EPA, labor and statistics. In these businesses, employees may report to an office, or they might report to an outdoor location, a barn, a manufacturing plant, or a warehouse. What solutions can you suggest to help them communicate in those types of workplaces? Think about things like directional signage, labor law posters, employee notifications, break room notices, name badges, warehouse labels, floor graphics, employment applications, and forms, to name a few. Navitor has a lot of solutions in these specific areas to help. Materials and products are coming in and leaving the facility every day. There are many different forms used in logistics. Truck drivers use driver logs, bill of ladings, hazardous material notices, placards, things like that. Warehouse employees are using forms and labels to help document receipt of material and move the material once it's there. These can include things like receiving forms, packing slips, shipping labels, barcode labels on cartons or on the shelving within the warehouse, and even cleaning logs in the facility. And don't forget about checks. Many companies still use them in both payroll and accounts payable. And we can't talk about compliance and regulations without talking about tax forms. They buy a lot of them. Just a word about forms. I find that sometimes customers will ask for a printed form that's really complicated. 6 parts, different copy on each part, numbered in multiple places. Before I enter a quote for something complex like that and expensive, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Who holds all these copies? What do the numbers mean? Who's tracking them? How long has it been since anyone reviewed the terms and conditions on the back of the form? Many times I find that that form has been around since the Beatles, and they don't even have 6 departments to send the copies to anymore. Just ask a few questions and then offer a simpler solution for less money. Change the spec to save them money and make the form something easily produced in one of our facilities. Win-win. So next we're going to talk about the regulations that are specific to the production of food and food safety. And you might guess there are a ton of regulations and compliance requirements here. Some of the workplaces can be hazardous. So a lot of the things that we just talked about will be required here as well. Sometimes these requirements will be for a temporary type of situation, like incoming animal product or a quarantine situation. In a controlled environment, it's important to keep track of all the people on site using things like checklists, visitor logs, or temporary passes, even passes on the vehicles that come in and out of the parking lot. Food products have to be kept safe from contamination. When you're thinking about what they might need here, think again about forms for tracking process, chain of custody, or data. Labeling is used on products, on cartons, on buildings. Many of these labels and forms will be used in harsh environments or exposed to moisture, grease, cleaning solutions, or biohazardous material even. Be sure to ask questions about where that product is going to be used once you get it to them. Look for things like instructions for use booklets or food safety notices, employee educational materials, and always signage. And remember, many of these items will require multi-language versioning, so be sure to ask about that as well. Forms, labels, and signage can help a business with the consistent application of process and policy while keeping everyone safe and the business in compliance. Stephanie, what were the results of that second poll that we put out?
Yeah, it looks like kind of what you were suspecting. So it looks like most folks have less than 10% of their customers are coming from those operations buyers, but we do have about 10% of you out there that have more than 50% from operations.
That's great. So it looks like some of you have experience working in operations and some of you have a lot of opportunity in this area. So just remember, with this market, you will likely be working with an operations buyer. I mentioned my experience earlier. One of the things that I sold early in my career was rubber stamps. And that's a great example of how this organic growth with the operations side of the business can work. I was working with a large retail organization, and at the time they had to buy rubber stamps for every cash register in the manager's office inside the store. So I started selling rubber stamps to this account. In the first year, I sold over $400,000 of rubber stamps. That certainly helped my sales that year. More importantly, humble beginnings led me to additional opportunities in the areas of directional signage, backroom labels, forms, and a beautiful onboarding packet for their HR department. My sales with this customer grew to over $2 million a year annually, and I retained their business for many years. All of that was necessary print that drove the operations and compliance side of the business. Stephanie, do you have we already did the results, never mind.
Yep.
I guess we're ready for the number one thing that is concerning to our ag buyers.
Yes. So thank you, Rhonda. So the number one thing that we saw over and over and heard in these interviews was talent acquisition and retention. One of the lines that I kept hearing was in these interviews was that ag is no longer your grandfather's farm. And yes, it can be dirty and backbreaking, but there's also automation and massive computer systems. There's technology, drones, huge IT and marketing career opportunities. So there's really a lot there. Another interesting thing to note here is that the USDA reports that ag and the allied industries there provide over 10% of US employment. So that's almost 20 million people. That means 1 in 10 Americans are working for ag. That's huge. That's a lot of people that they got to bring in through those doors and keep them going and keep them loyal to the companies. So I've got a few things here on recruitment that I wanted to go over. So ag businesses are definitely looking for labor, and they're also looking for globally sourced labor. So that might be a little different, or you might be working with clients that are already in that process. In one case study, or agri story, to give Harris credit on that one, Cargill, so one of the larger producers in this industry, Cargill created an employee store for their merchandise. But the kicker here was that the employee could view the store in their own language. So there were 6 languages and 11 locations. That language versatility is really important for any and all recruiting print programs. Navitor can do this. So talk to us about our technology for these employee stores. So talk to us about that. For local recruitment, then, ag businesses participate heavily in local career fairs, community events. That can also be fairs, festivals, carnivals, state fairs, that kind of a thing. You'll see them setting up little kiosks with signage, tables, brochures, posters, that kind of a thing. And these products need to be easily washable, easily foldable, and highly mobile. Often it is outside, it can be in the rain, it can be on rocky or muddy, dirty surfaces. These folks have to be very mobile in order to make that work. So our products can serve that too. Next was onboarding. And the reason that the onboarding is so important is because you might be bringing in anywhere from 10 to 10,000 different employees. And one of the ways that folks do this is through welcome kits. Those kits can include some or all of the following. So folders to hold it all together, name badges, access badges, welcome letters, maps are really important, vehicle passes, handbooks, even QR codes for employee portals and such like that. One of the interesting things just to call out on those employee portals, if you're not used to necessarily working with those, is that we see a ton of orders for these business cards and postcards. And basically all it is a URL or a bit.ly link or a QR code. And it just gives the people, the employees, access to their employee portal where they might get their paychecks in advance. They might be logging their time in there. It might tell them the schedule or the location of where they're expected to arrive. And it might tell them where to park. It can tell them all sorts of information. So those employee portals are really important in this industry to just have easy access to them so they can grab them at any time. And then don't forget to ask your client about their agencies that they might be working with who are sourcing this talent, whether it's global or local. These agencies can also be ones to send out those welcome kits in advance. And that eases the onboarding burden to during the planting and harvest season. If you're really bringing a lot of folks through your doors or through your gates, what it might be, they have the information in advance, and it just makes them that much more successful and efficient. So then the next one is really one of the biggest things that we saw and heard from this industry within talent and acquisition is around the next generation. So first, with the next generation, it's similar to other industries where remote work is becoming more popular. So you guys have all heard of the Great Resignation. We've got full-time employees quitting in large numbers across the country, but in agriculture, they're calling it the Great Reset. They're empowering young people to work in technology, sustainability, conservation, innovative fields like this. And that's where they're bringing in a lot of the youth. So for some of the solutions that we have to provide for you, there is overlap to general recruiting processes. So of course there would be, but I want to give you 3 main tips to really hit the younger generations here hard. Number 1, folks under 40 respond highly, more than any other generation, to direct mail initiatives. So if you're working in ag and they're not using direct mail to reach this audience, that is a huge opportunity for you. Number 2, promo products. What kind of merch are those businesses sharing at these hiring events? Is it just logos on pens or logos on t-shirts, logos on whatever it is that they're passing out? That's just not good enough anymore. It's too bland, and you just can't be bland in this industry. You need to have fun and catchy taglines. How can you help bring those ideas forward with them? And number 3, advertising and sponsorship in schools. But schools aren't the only location. They're just a good starting point. When you want to plant that seed with the younger generation, that can also start in children's museums as well as the elementary schools. That can be posters, signage, temporary, permanent fixtures, and more. Look then to the 4-H clubs. That's kind of obvious, but then also look to robotics clubs. That's where you're going to get those innovative thinkers. Bring those kids in too and introduce them to agriculture. Technical schools, colleges, and universities are all obvious hotbeds for growing your success in recruiting the younger generation into ag. Another thing to just kind of sidebar here is that with Navitor members, typically education is a top 1 or 2 industry that you're already working with. So think about the contacts that you have in these different schools or in these different settings and see if you can bridge connections and networks with your own clients to help foster those connections. Because ag's looking for the next generation, you're working with folks who are also talking to the next generation. You might be able to bridge that, be that bridge for them. Mm-hmm. My point here is really underscoring Rhonda's original point. So print is print at the end of the day. But if you come with these ideas, it's the ideas that you're selling. You can bring them those catchy taglines. You can bring them the imagery for those posters. You can be the one selling the ideas that they'd be excited about. And there are places that can help you that are very inexpensive, like Fiverr.com or Upwork.com, that kind of a thing that really can bring you a lot of good information. So same with our next section, we'll go through how ag businesses are marketing themselves. I know we've been talking a lot about this, that the budget isn't in marketing, it's in operations. So same with you saw with Rhonda that you see in talent here. And now Harris will take you to the next section for marketing yourself. Harris?
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, thanks. So let's talk about growing and farming more agribusiness. There's more coming. I'm hoping you... So I'm hoping all of you find as I do, there are so many companies that are waiting for your great ideas. So I went ahead and reviewed the 2021 State of Agriculture report, and there were some statistics that I found really striking. So in a survey of participants, 79% of business owners said they were either somewhat or very optimistic about the economic prospect of their community within the next 2 to 3 years. And 64% said the state of agriculture in their region is coming and going in the right direction. Now, what these results show me is despite their businesses being affected by COVID, regulations, and keeping and acquiring talent, business owners in agriculture are still feeling pretty good about moving forward. And specifically, they're talking about growing. So I want to talk about three major buyers: seed and chemical manufacturers, grocers, and consumer packaging. So let's start with a chemical supplier named Gowan. Now, Gowan is one of the largest seeding and chemical suppliers worldwide, and they have 13 different brands. Now, for one, with my sales direct background, when I see 13 different brands, I think to myself, I wonder if all their companies order corporate ID on the same platform. Do they have 13 different decision makers for each company, or is it centralized? If they don't have it set up already, they could definitely benefit from an online ordering platform. And Navitor offers end user facing e-stores, which are what I like to call the triple win. So we win because orders come in automatically. You win because it saves you from manual orders, and customers win because ordering online is so easy. Another thing I wonder is, how does Gowan acquire new customers? So right on the top left of their website, I was assigned a sales rep based on my zip code. I wonder how many sales reps they have and what print and promo items they have to equip them. Do they have brochures? Do they have pads, sell sheets, promo giveaways? Do they attend trade shows? And so on. So now let's look at a smaller company closer to where I live, about an hour west of me in Ephrata, Pennsylvania. So I went out to this location a couple times with a previous company, and I really didn't think that there was a lot of print opportunity. So I was so surprised when they told me they ordered 10,000 envelopes at a time and at all different sizes. Now, they ordered them for 4 companies. So here's another agri prospect. See what I did there? An agri prospect with different sub companies or divisions. So we have Four Seasons Produce, Earth Source, Sunrise Logistics, and Sunrise Transport. And wouldn't you know it, all 4 brands had envelopes and business cards. So that's 40,000 envelopes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And in a very localized market in Amish country, Pennsylvania, Four Season
Mhm.
Produce purchases from local farms, which of course is fantastic. And their yard signs, while I was driving around there, were all over the many farmlands within maybe about a 5-mile radius because they're so big. And finally, Four Seasons Produce purchased high-end promotional items for their customers. They had a few important partnerships, and these included high-end notebooks, high-end tumblers, really fancy pens, and additionally, their marketing materials were in really nice folders. So now we're going to go to another local grocery store right down the road called Shady Maple, about 10 miles down from Ephrata, in a small town right outside of Lancaster called East Earl. Now, this is by far the largest grocery store in the area. And side note, if you happen to somehow be in the Eastern Pennsylvania area, Shady Maple is a great place to visit. They have a really nice buffet, and it's so good, especially for brunch. We travel, an hour and a half just to go there. It's that good. And Shady Maple also has their own brand of nuts, dried fruits, and candies. And their flexible pouch bin is definitely a worthwhile opportunity. Now, alongside that, I can't imagine how many labels Shady Maple needs on a monthly basis for their brand offering, for their produce section, meats, and so much more. Now, while very, very large grocers like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's will be really tough accounts to land and will probably come with low margins, there are so many Shady Maples out there that you can go out and talk to. So finally, we're going to discuss our last vertical within agribusiness, consumer packaging and sales. So like every other millennial out there, I went to Google and I found and searched for consumer packaging in Eastern Pennsylvania. And I found Supply One. And Supply One offers labels, corrugate, flexible packaging, and food packaging. And among one of Supply One's offerings is on-site management. And I wonder if Supply One orders retractable banners for their grocers that they serve. And if not, perhaps they should. So when prospecting to agribusiness, or really any other business, I think one of the most important things is being able to answer the question, why should this decision maker give up a half hour of their time for me? At the same time, marketing professionals and consumer products need to answer the age-old question, what can we do as a marketing group to stand out? Now, with so many food brands, both super large and super small, the answer these days is custom packaging. Branding is more important than ever, and the importance of a brand to pick the right language and right design is massive. So when you're a consumer in the food aisle, what brand sticks out to you and screams, buy me, buy me? And in a competitive space, food packaging has to be smart and it has to be fun. So how can you even add more value to these brands? Well, it's your expertise in the marketplace. So I often frequent Trader Joe's down the street from me, and they have such cool, fun names for their brand. Their Cheerios or Jozos. They have catchy, snarky language, sometimes snarky, right? Anyway, they tell they tell a story about the company or the family behind the brand, and I love that. And when I use sorry, yet when I used to work at an unnamed grocery store in high school, their private label brand didn't say too much. I specifically remember their pizza boxes just saying pizza. How valuable could you be to a small agri firm offering free tips on verbiage? They're getting old, I know. Telling the peanut farmer it's not just peanuts in a bag, it's high protein with a touch of sea salt, perfect for your high energy snacks in a resellable pouch. Think language, think value. And I think they'll be buying from you from now on. So I'd like to close by talking a bit about prospecting agribusiness. And I used to visit clients in the Philadelphia metro area. And most of the time I was in large office complexes. And I had to laugh because I'd run into many others in our profession on a constant basis. And if we know if you have an appointment in an area, it usually makes sense to prospect around that area before the next appointment. So one of the cool things I think about agribusiness is many of the locations are in rural areas. So they're not getting called on in person. So instead of trying to beat down a door that's getting beat down by the competition, while you're on the road, stop by some of these agri prospects, and they may be very happy to get a visit from you. So thanks. And we're going to go back to Stephanie, who's going to take us through question and answer.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Harris. That was awesome. All right, folks. So as we move into the Q&A portion, I just wanted to make sure you saw the booklet that we've been talking about. This is an unbranded booklet. It's a marketing piece that you can use. You can give this directly to your customers. So I put the link in the chat. We'll put it in there again just so you see it. But it's an in-depth, has details, research, recommendation, product visuals that really make it easy to feel the expert as you venture out in this market. So the majority of you on this call today really don't have a lot of customers in this area, and the majority of you haven't really sold to operations buyers before. So this booklet can really help you get yourself out there. If you look at the URL up there, I know it might be a little small, but it's just printcatalog.net. It's generic. Again, you can use this link. You can print this. You can put your logo on this. You can do it however you want. You guys are all entrepreneurial out there, and make this your own and put this out there. Good training tool for your own sales folks, but also to be able to use in front of customers. So I think that's really good to know. Those have been going out in the insider newsletter as well, that we send out every Tuesday. So you guys have some of that access too. All right, so let's move into the Q&A portion formally. We've got a lot of questions from you out there, so I'm going to get started. One of the first questions that we got is that we talked a lot about buying from operations. That was a very big theme throughout this whole webinar. What would you suggest are the people titles that we should call on? Rhonda, maybe I'll ask if you can answer that one for us first.
Well, when you're not calling on the marketing department, you're going to be talking to people who are in, like, starting with the chief operating officer of the company. If it's a small company, it might be the owner. It could be the production manager, the business manager, a purchasing agent, because many of these places, while they are buying print, but it's considered to be not a huge part of what they buy, because they're buying raw materials and seeds and truckloads of stuff to come into their facility. So you might be speaking to a purchasing agent, even though we try to stay away from them sometimes. But in these businesses, they're busy, and they are going to appreciate somebody who comes in with some experience and knowledge that'll help them do the right thing for their business.
Right. And I think I've got another question that I think is kind of piggybacking on that. So when you talk about like going out there, Rhonda and Harris, you mentioned that as well. One of the questions is, yeah, but if they only have 3 locations, how do the numbers make sense? How do we, make that as an investment? So maybe you guys want to talk about how distributors that you see, how they kind of weigh that investment. Rhonda, you want to start us off?
One of the ways that I've seen is, people are not always looking for the huge long runs. A Shady Maple with 3 locations might be looking for label quantities in the, anywhere from 500 to 5,000 range, versus a larger organization like a Publix might be looking for 50,000 or 500,000, which we're not going to be. And we may get that business, but as Harris said earlier, it won't be as profitable as the guy that needs the small quantity. And Navitor specializes in those small to mid-range quantities. So we'll be able to help you with those kinds of buyers.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So then I think another one then to add on to this is, how cost sensitive are the ag businesses? So that was a question out there today. Especially when you're buying from operations. Sorry, I think I'm going to call on Rhonda again one more time, just because I think you might be able to share a little bit about when you were selling into some of these highly regulated industries, which is very similar. How cost sensitive are they? Want to talk about that?
Well, I don't think you could say that anybody anywhere is not cost sensitive today.
Yeah.
So of course you're going to have to be competitive. But again, the idea is that you are a bigger fish in a smaller pond, because there's not as many people calling on some of these businesses. Obviously, some of them are. I sold to Scott's in Columbus, outside of Columbus, Ohio, and they had just as many print buyers calling on them as anybody else, and they are an ag business. But some of these might not be seeing as many people, and it's always just that the ability to ask them questions that help you uncover a need that nobody else has asked them about, or a creative idea that nobody else has given them. And then they'll help you win the business. If they find a reason to want to work with you, they're going to help you win.
Yep. I think so too. Okay. Harris, do you want to add anything else to that?
No. One thing I guess I just want to talk about is, going after grocery stores and these companies. I think it's really important to do discovery, right? Because you really don't know until you set in a meeting, right? So, calling on operations, executives, or really any C-level, anyone C-suite, or anyone really. The first conversation should be discovery, right? We should be trying to figure out, hey, do we have a match here? And if we don't have a match, we walk away as friends. So really it's you're not going to, I would call on, 10, 15, 20 and get those meetings. And if it's not a match, that's fine. So you can learn more about it, because you just never know what that spend. You don't never know what that spend's going to be until you find out.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And we have distributorships here that are very small, and we have some that are extremely large. So there's a couple of questions in here that, is kind of getting at that. Well, I typically do much larger businesses. Well, then maybe you don't want to start with the Shady Maple that only has 3 locations, but getting your foot in the door and getting started in an industry, sometimes the smaller works kind of better. You can kind of feel your way through it. Okay, we got a couple of questions then around the languages. So specifically, are there any translators for Native American languages? There's a lot of tribal clients, South Dakota, North Dakota, and soon in Arizona. So I think that's a fair question. So I'm going to generalize this to any language, but in particular Native American languages. So what I would just highlight is going online to different locations like Fiverr.com. So that's Fiverr.com, for example. Lots of translating opportunities there, or gigs as they call them. And then you can actually get that translated and get it done by a couple of people to just make sure it looks right to you. There's more websites online that you can do this to. I mean, I would not recommend using Google Translate, especially when you're using using maybe languages that aren't as popularized yet right now. So that would be some of the suggestions that we have. Navitor does not have any translators on staff for those languages, to answer your specific question out there, Bridget. But there's lots of opportunities online to get access to those translations. Rhonda or Harris, would you want to add anything else there?
I agree. There are a lot of resources that can help with it, but the biggest thing is to ask the question. Sometimes your customer may not have In the same way that I said, how long has it been since you looked at the terms and conditions on the back of the form? How long has it been since you asked yourself what languages you need your forms to be translated to? A lot of people are still translating to English and Spanish only, and they're missing the boat there, because we have a lot more language speaking people coming into the business than just English and Spanish these days.
Yes, absolutely. Like we were saying with that one case study, Cargill had 6 languages there, like that's, and sometimes it's not even just a whole language. It might be, a dialect or something that's just different enough that you want to really have that specialty. So I think that's good. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions then around these ideas and kind of that theme of like the investment. And so these ideas can be really expensive. We talked about going to the location, but we also mentioned posters in schools, signage to get people interested. So sometimes maybe that doesn't feel feasible. How do you supply a school with posters unless you're doing the creative? And actually some of the chats we're talking about, we do the creative and that's part of our fee structure, but maybe some of you aren't as used to that. So what suggestions do we have here? I can answer this. Rhonda or Harris, you guys want to give it a first shot too?
I'm drawing a blank at the moment.
Yep, all you, Stephanie.
Oh, it's all me. Okay. Okay. Well, I would say that this one is there's a lot of really good opportunities here. So we already mentioned Fiverr. There's also Upwork.com. There's a lot of those kind of gig sites that are really good to make these kinds of things, posters or whatever it is. Or copy, like, you can ask a copywriter on one of those gigs to say, I want 50 different taglines for young people getting into innovation in the ag market, and see what you get back. You might not like all of them, but you probably will like many of them. And then that's something that you can bring forward to your client. We do this all the time as Navitor. And if you start finding someone that you really like to work with, it's pretty inexpensive. Actually, you can get these things for $10 to $15 on up. So, obviously you pay for what you get, but you can get a lot of good ideas going there. There's also like imagery that you can get. So there's iStock, Shutterstock.com. Those are typically paid, although they do have some free, but there's also Pexels.com, Pexels.com. And this is a really great one. It's all free and they have incredible imagery that you can use for commercial purposes. So check out that kind of a site. I mean, I don't want to say it's as easy as putting up a cornfield and a cool tagline, but I'd start there. It's a place to start to kind of get in front of people and then have them add their own kind of whatever that school is talking about or whatever that organization might be really important to them. So those would be some of the suggestions I would have there. Anything you guys want to add, Rhonda or Harris?
I would add, I think you may have mentioned this already, but if you have people that in the colleges, one of the things that's kind of challenging in translating to other languages, proofing the work that you've done in another language. So if you have friends in the colleges, you can always call, like the head of the Spanish department or the head of the language department and say, hey, I've got something that needs to be proofread. And they can use it as a college, exercise in their class.
Yeah.
To help you with that.
That's a really good point. Yep, that's a great point. Okay, the next question that we have is, do you sell promo as well? I don't do much print, focus more on promo and prospecting to a large chemical customer right now. So that's kind of an interesting one. So yes, we do sell promo on Navitor.com. We actually just launched hundreds of new products there. So if you go to Navitor.com and go on the left nav, you'll see promo products right there. And we do have quite a lot of variety there. Okay. And then prospecting to a large chemical company, meant for Harris. I'm not sure what that means. Harris, did you have something you wanted to add about chemical companies?
No, Cheryl asked if anyone had experience with chemical companies, and I had said, yes, I worked with a large chemical company. And I was just saying that I remember a lot of things that I did. They did mailers. So the chemical company would send out price increases and they sent them through mail, and it was like regulated. So they had to do it in a certain period of time. They did a lot of labels. I mean, and the labels were very intense. They had to be freeze proof. They had to be, made for certain weather conditions and extreme temperatures, so we did a lot of that. We did brochures. We did a lot for them, and they also did a ton of promo. But at that job, I had only done print. But I know that they had their own promo e-store. It was a very very large company. They were nationwide.
Very cool. Okay, very cool. Thank you, Harris.
Yep.
We also got a question that is actually kind of a fun question. What is the definition of agribusiness? So, Rhonda, you want to hit this one? And I think then we can kind of elaborate from there. Rhonda?
The main definition is the group of industries dealing with agricultural produce and services required in farming. Mm-hmm. So I think that, covers really the gamut of food production.
Yeah. And, there's the animal side of it. There's the crop side of it, the food production, the distribution and logistics. There's the regulations part of it. There's the talent. I mean, that's what we've kind of tried to cover. There is all of this that feeds into ag. I mean, you don't get to 10% of the overall employment in the United States without a lot of arms in this field.
It's interesting when you Google the definition of that word, agribusiness, they mention especially using advanced technology. So as you said in the beginning, these are not your grandfather's farms.
Yeah.
These are businesses that are really trying to modernize and be more efficient and all of the things that we talked about earlier in the presentation.
Right.
Yeah, I want to add, I was at 2 pretty large print companies, and we never focused on agribusiness, and that's why I think it's just so untapped.
Yeah,
I don't think that a lot of print companies are actively going after the business.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really true. I think we get a little thrown off because the budget doesn't seem to be there. Because when you hear they have a 3% budget in marketing, you're like, what's the point? But when you really get into it and see what they're doing, it's like, no, it's all there. It's just not in a place that we're totally used to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I think another component of agribusiness then is, what was I going to say there? Like there's these like huge conglomerate organizations that dominate the field. And then there's family farms too. But whether you're on either side of the spectrum or your client is on either side of the spectrum, I thought one of the most interesting things was when these companies, these farms are buying the seeds, those might be $200,000, $300,000 purchases, and just for the seed. And so when they're doing that, the seed company then has this huge, work that they do in loyalty and communications and telling, the value of the seeds. But then after the purchase, they might be giving away Yeti coolers and stuff like that. They might be giving sweatshirts to the entire staff at that farm. It is not like your typical promo that is kind of small and trinkety. It is large expense because they're looking at, the loyalty of this customer over the decades and generations buying that seed. And that was really interesting to me too. Okay, so another question that we have is around the graphic design. So some of you were talking about we offer creative services, but you may or may not have a graphic designer. And I did hear this and see this in a lot of the research we saw with ag, is that there's kind of like a lot of drawing on napkins of here's my logo for the, for the work that I'm doing, or, hey, I'm trying to do a new product line for this, farmer's market. How do I kind of do that? But they may not understand the file formats that it needs to come in order to get produced. And then sometimes it can be annoying with those graphic design kind of fees. So how do we make this work when you're working with a new client there? So that question is coming out. So I can touch on this one probably, and then Rhonda and Harris, if you guys want to add a little more to it. We did start a new service called Nav Design. And so we can put that into our email this afternoon to you guys too. But one of the things that we do is if you have a drawing on a napkin, we can convert that into the brochure that you're looking for, or the logo that you're looking for. Or if you have, like Rhonda was joking about a form, well, maybe it's not a joke, it really happens, but the forms from the ages of the Beatles, if you have that and you just want to make some tweaks to it, we can do that to you too. So we have some fees. It's like $15 to $25 to make tweaks or kind of redo maybe a business card or whatever it might be for you. But then we also have full service design if you really want to get into creating something new. And we have both ends of the spectrum there. So that's Nav Design. That could be something of how you work with your clients that gives you those print ready files that are, you know, ready to get out there. Rhonda or Harris, would you guys add anything else there?
Yeah. Go ahead, Rhonda, please.
That's all right. I was just going to say some of the services you talked about earlier, Fiverr and Upwork, or, you know, recommending them, your customer reach out to something like that too, if we don't have what they need.
Yep. That's true.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that you know, kind of my worst nightmare when I was selling direct is, oh, look at this artwork. Oh, what is this customer? What is this customer thinking? Happens. They don't get it. But let us do the design for you. We have a team of designers, and instead of you guys, even if you have designers, you know, leave that work to us, you know, and just, you know, take it off your, let us take it off your plate for you. You don't want to, the less design stuff you're doing, sometimes the better, and we love doing it. So.
And we love doing it. Yeah, we do. So Bridget's
a little story about that.
Yeah, go ahead, Rhonda.
A little story about this. If it's something that you're doing a lot of, like somebody said in the chat, they want to do hats. You know, maybe what we could do is help you build a template. I was selling shrink sleeves to the craft brew market in Indiana, Michigan area. And we had a customer who was a mobile canning company. They went to these little garage breweries, and you know how many of those there are nowadays. And so their problem was the artwork that they were getting for the cans looked really, really cool, but it didn't have all the regulatory stuff on there, like for the government, and the, you know, ounces and the amount of alcohol content and all that kind of stuff. So we built a template for the label so that it was the right size for I mean, think about it, a shrink label, you know, how are you going to get all that distortion managed when they shrink it down to put it on the can? So we built a template that they could just have their designer use to import the information that they needed, and the template would remind them of what, you know, content was still needed in order for it to be compliant. Here we go with compliance again.
Yep.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. And I can add, Bridget, if you do want to do something extensive with hats, maybe you might do that full design, because the drop down, like you're talking about, is intended for kind of quick ones that we can hit and get it into the right file format for you. But we do it the full design too. I don't know if you want to do like one hat with full design, but we can do that. So just as FYI, there's two forms there. One sort of the quick and hit it fast, and then she says we need to do this a lot. So okay. And then on the other side, which is full spectrum design, where you get like a quote and you kind of go through that process because you really want to get into it. So yeah, we do that too for you.
Yeah, like I said, let us take that headache away from you.
Yep. Sounds good. And we'll get the link in there for you guys in this afternoon's email. You will get a recording. You will get a downloadable copy of the presentation. You'll get a link to this, the booklet as well. So you'll get all of those good materials. All right. So I think we're almost at time. I have one more question though, that I think I have just one last question that I didn't hit yet. So does Navitor offer a white label ordering system or some sort of e-store that customers, your end customers, can directly access and make for orders? So Harris, I'm going to put that over to you.
Yes, that is, the short answer is yes, absolutely. It's something that we love doing. I did talk about that a little early. It's, you know, we have automatic ordering. We would be able to put your information in the customer service section of the site. If you contact me directly, or I can send you an email, I can take you through it, or someone else can take you through it here. We have a demo, and that demo is actually customer facing as well. So you could learn the demo and take your customer through it, or however you want to do it. But the answer is yes, we offer it, and I love talking about it because it's you know, really everybody wins. Your customers really love it. It makes it so much easier for them, probably the most easy for you all. And you know, we do prefer the more automatic orders that come in, the better, just for our backend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, a lot easier that way. All right, very cool. All right, it looks like we got through all the questions. Hopefully there wasn't anything I missed. You guys will all get emails because you've all registered for this webinar. You all get emails with all of these good links. And Jen, I saw your note. I will make sure that Harris gets that address and will contact you directly. So thank you everyone for your time today. Don't forget that we will have a survey that will pop up as you sign off. That really helps guide our future webinars. So please use that. That really helps. Thank you to everyone on the panel, Rhonda and Harris. We really appreciate your time. And thank you all of you for listening to this call today and your engagement. We know you're spread pretty thin, so visit Navitor.com, sign up for all the free tools that you've seen today. We've recorded the session. You'll get copies of everything in the email today. Here at Navitor, we innovate, you sell, it's a win. We can't wait to see what you do with agriculture in the next 60 days. We're excited for you. Let us know how it's going. Let us know what we can do to help. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.